So I want to talk about Los Angeles, and I'm sure it probably applies to other cities in California as far as the rental market from the landlord's perspective. Now, quick backstory. I have a rental. I have a duplex in LA, and one of the people that moved into one of the units was kind of late paying their rent or just being a hassle in general. So I asked a couple of people on the LA like real estate forums, and they all said, "Oh, you need to talk to a professional eviction attorney in LA." So I contacted that person, and as far as like the news and the laws, it's bad, and it's worse. It's much worse than I even thought about it. Now, before I even get into what they told me, for people who don't live in LA or not familiar with the California rent control, I have to fill this in. So if people are shocked with like the landlords that I tell out here are investors, but basically, it's rough. You can buy a single family house and then that'll come vacant. But at like a duplex, triplex, anything like multiple units, I mean, you could possibly find one that's vacant, but most likely you're buying it with tenants. Now, these tenants, their rent can't be increased and their lease can't be ended. As long as they're not a complete nuisance, as in like selling drugs out of out of the unit, or something super crazy, or having like a full-on meth lab. Basically, they can stay as long as they want forever. Now, there are some exceptions. You can take you could do an Ellis Act eviction if you plan on moving in there into that unit yourself. That's a huge process. Or if you want to take the whole property off the rental market, you can pop. But then still, I think you're still paying them like $10,000 or up to $10,000 or even more dollars for relocation. But those people, if the rent is $500, they'll keep paying $500 almost till eternity. Now, yes, you could raise the rent 2 or 3% or whatever. There's a committee that meets every year and allows the landlords to increase. They set the maximum amount of increase. Of course, they're always in a crisis mode, a rental affordability crisis. So it's always going to be at lowest possible value of like 2 or 3%, which is even lower than inflation. So you get a place, or you rent out a place, well, you're stuck with those tenants forever. If they, you basically have to set the rent at the highest possible level. And if over the years the unit will, because the increases are less than inflation, over the years the unit becomes more cheaper and cheaper. And then there's no point of upgrading or keeping your unit nice, because that money is going to be lose. You can't recoup that. You can't recoup your investment. Aside from like some them moving out, then you could bring the rents up to market, or you could do like a little remodeling and bring the rents up. But now, because of this pandemic, or the excuse of the pandemic, what has it caused? Well, talking to an eviction attorney, and keep in mind, this is like other real estate investors recommend. This is not just some like bad attorney that you can find somebody better, doesn't, whatever. This is like a rock star. They're saying that there's a eviction moratorium. Oh, keep in mind, it's already April. It's already April of 2022, and they're still not letting people get evicted. Paying rent is optional. Now, I don't know, we're in like the hottest possible labor market and anybody's lifetime. There's forced like help wanted signs absolutely everywhere. If you get the free government vaccine, there's almost no chance you're going to die of the virus. And yet, because of the messed up ideology that's like borderline socialist, that's saying that landlords are rich, and then these poor renters, they don't, we should get one over on them. But like, hey, we're gonna crank up the laws as hard as much as possible towards the tenant side. So paying rent is completely optional, point blank. You're not going to get evicted for not paying rent. On top of that, somebody could, I mean, this is still the case. Somebody could have rented this place last month, still have the same, quote unquote, even though they could have rented last month, they could have showed an insanely income. They could have showed a big bank statement that they have a lot of money. If they don't pay, they don't pay. That's it. They don't have to pay. Even though they're going to try to, they're going to try to claim like eviction or COVID hardship, even though you qualify them properly. Another thing with this, the reason why I was talking to an eviction attorney is because the person has clearly violated the lease. I had a professional lease made, 16 pages, that clearly states you can't sublease this place. This is for the person that I'm qualifying to live there. Well, they never moved in. They just moved somebody else in. Now, clearly they broke the lease, and it would be, I could go to court, and it's possible, it's a big chance whether this eviction will go through. But basically, I would have to stop collecting rent from that individual, because the reason why this rent control works is because I could see the rent control law would be very vulnerable, because a lot of these big families, like Hispanic families that would move in, they would start, they get one person qualified, the one tenant, and they start moving all sorts of family members in, and then the person that got qualified dies or moved out. So there's a bunch of completely different people that never got qualified to live in that place. So you'd think that, the landlord, they can go get check the lease. Well, nobody that's living there is on the lease. Okay, well, that's ground for eviction? No. If you collected their rent from these unknown people that are moved in or whatever, basically that's an endorsement that you're okay with this arrangement, which is bonkers. It's insane. So, and here's the thing. You can technically do 4 inspections a year legally, but you have to give a certain amount of notice, and guess what? They don't have to let you in. They could say, you could ask to knock. If you're saying you suspect somebody of growing weed or something in your property, you can ask to come in. They could just say no, and then you could just say you can make another appointment, ask to where you can come back. Now, if they don't let you in for maybe months and months, then yes, you can file an eviction, but you can come there, and I don't know how many times you have to come back. They could just say, no, you can't come in. So, and here's a cherry on top. So the tenant that subleased, that I rented to, that subleased the place, well, he had amazing perfect credit. So I was thinking, well, at least if I confront him about him not paying rent on time, this and that, I know that technically it's going to be hard to evict him, but at least he's putting his perfect credit on the line, going to court with me, right? Oh, but here's the cherry on top is that California, LA right now, because of this eviction moratorium, they don't report evictions on your credit. So I could get a judgment as far as if they didn't pay rent for 8 months or 6 months. That could be on his credit that he owes me money. But as far as having a hard eviction on his credit report, they don't do that. They don't report that to the agencies. So it's insane. The laws are absolutely insane. At this point, the eviction moratoriums until 2023, they can probably, who knows, because of political reasons, they can extend it again. I mean, it's going to be a complete joke. It's going to be a farce, but there's a lot of things in LA that's complete farces. So somebody could move in. You could rent a place to a person. Somebody can give you their friend's perfect credit score, perfect job history, whatever. Somebody else can move in that the landlord never qualified for. Never qualified. They don't have to pay rent, and the original person will never get a bad mark on their credit report. Paying rent is completely optional. Now, eventually you would get probably kicked out after a certain amount of years. You could spend up probably more than Now, when they start the eviction process again, like the court's going to be backed up. So you're looking, and you could live somewhere for free for 2 years, completely screwing over the landlord. It is so bad and so incredible that yes, I mean you would think with these awful laws and how badly how bad it is doing business in California that everybody would flat out immediately. Well, I'm in there right now because I have a legacy property that I bought in 2015. So there are still people that offer rentals in LA, but you got to think that stories of people being burnt and institutional investors that are owed millions upon millions of dollars from like 20% of their tenants not paying, and there's nothing they can do about it. I would seriously think that in the future, investment in like real estate and rental properties is going to dry up, as it should.